Mm. Welcome, everybody, to the 14th episode of Shaman Sister Sessions. I'm Michelle Hawk, and I'm here with my deep medicine sister, Katherine Bird. It is our pleasure to bring this offering to you. This is something that was born out of these amazing conversations that Kat and I would have, just because as shamans and as practitioners working with spiritual health and well-being, mental, emotional growth and development, personal work, we would talk for hours about the intricacies of human consciousness and spiritual growth and evolution. And eventually we decided that perhaps these conversations might be interesting and relevant to other people. So thus was born the Shaman Sister Sessions. So thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are delighted to speak about self-love.
Yes.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
We wanted to speak about self-love on Valentine's Day. I think a lot of times on Valentine's Day, if we feel like maybe we're not partnered, or we get down on ourselves and we're like, oh, okay, I'm all alone. It's Valentine's Day. This just proves I'm alone.
Yeah.
I sent a thing this morning to someone, and it was like, Happy Single Awareness Day. So
right. All of these, these names that we have for it, kind of the joking, making fun at like, oh, haha, not in a relationship, or even if you are in a relationship, sort of that, like, okay, all of a sudden, everyone's getting their act together and being extra lovey, and Kat, I'm sure you've had this experience too of being in a relationship on Valentine's Day, and it's like everybody wakes up to like, oh yeah, we're supposed to care about each other. We're supposed to love each other. Some extra attention involved. And then there's the candy that nobody eats because it's crappy candy and whatever else. So we wanted to dial into the practice of self-love and devotion, especially. Both Kat and I were talking the other day, and both of us have really been practicing devotion a lot lately, especially this year. It's been kind of the word of the year. It's already come up in several of our past episodes where we're talking about how are you devoting yourself, to your own joy. So that's what we're talking about today, is how can we devote ourselves to the practice of self-love?
Yes. So I think we should start with, what it is. What is self-love? What's it about? Like, what does it mean to you, Michelle?
Self-love means to me, especially in the challenging moments, that you can be compassionate to yourself in even the most challenging moments where you feel unworthy or unlovable, or as though there is some part of you that is too deep and dark to ever reveal to the world. When you can even bring compassion and grace to those parts of yourself, that is self-love. So I've had many opportunities to practice that. We all have our deep, dark moments, and especially several years ago, I was going through my shamanic underworld initiation, or one of my underworld initiations. And that was something that really supported me through that process, is noticing even these parts of myself that feel so unlovable, I am going to bring them to the light, and I am going to feel compassionate toward myself, even to those parts. And everything else is much easier when you can love even the parts of yourself that you don't want to show anybody. That's one aspect for me. How about you?
Well, I think that, self-love is a lot about coming back to self. Like, so often we're seeking outside of ourselves for something to make us feel better, or to soothe us, or to, prove something that, prove that we're lovable somehow out in the world. If I do this, then this kind of proves that I'm lovable. Or if I engage in this activity that will fill me up, whether, whatever it is, all of our things that we engage in that we're trying to kind of fill our cup with besides our own self. And I think that self-love is that piece of coming back to self. Even when we want to be shining our light outward and looking everywhere else but inward to try to find you know, a soothingness or something that fills us up. I think it's choosing to shine the light inward instead of always outward.
I think that's a really important point of it, you know, where a lot of time, and we're raised in a society that conditions us to look outwards for validation. You know, are you getting good grades? That's an external evaluation of your worth. Are you are you respectful to your parents as a kid? You know, that's an external validation of your worth, where your parents are saying, yes, you're a good kid. As you continue to grow older, are you a good partner? Do you show up for your partner in a certain way? That's an external validation of your worth. And so we live in a world that doesn't teach us how to come into ourselves and look inward and say, regardless of any external factors, am I happy? Am I present in myself? When I bring my awareness into my body and into my state of being, is that a comfortable and safe place for me to be? And for many people, that is not the case. Many people are not comfortable and safe as soon as they dial internally. Many people cannot be present in themselves or in the space of their own hearts. So that's another element I would add, is when, or add on to what you were saying, Kat, is when we can come back into ourselves and be present in our own heart space and know that we are safe and comfortable there. That's another aspect of self-love.
Right. That, you know, as we cultivate that, and it really is a cultivation. It is a practice, just as when we talk about all of the different practices that we talk about on this program. It is another practice that we must be devoted to, as we see that all of the practices, that anything that we want to be good at, we have to instill with this feeling of devotion towards it. And some of us have to really work at it. We have to you know, almost put it in our calendar and schedule it and remind ourselves and make a real commitment towards being more self-loving and you know, watching our thoughts that we have about ourselves, and choosing to start to create new thoughts about ourselves.
Yeah, there's an aspect of reprogramming and retraining ourselves. And sometimes it does, sometimes it does have to take the form of blocking out in your calendar, okay, this is my time for me. I had to do that this week, actually. And even despite my best of intentions, I was not entirely successful. I intended to take tomorrow completely off. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen. But I will be receiving a healing session, and I booked out the afternoon. So I get half a day off tomorrow. But I had to schedule it into my calendar. And sometimes that's what we have to do.
Yeah. And I do the same. And I find that if I don't, you know, it doesn't go well. You know, I've gotten to the point where I you know, I have a scheduling, you know, online scheduling calendar for people to be able to book with me. And I don't allow bookings from 3 sometimes to 4 days of the week. I take off that are possibilities. So so then I have these days to play with, and then I have to be responsible for what I'm scheduling within those days. And for me, sometimes you know, I'll be like, oh, okay, well, I have these days off. I'm going to be with my lover. I'm going to be with my friends. I'm going to go do ceremonial work. I'm going to book these other things and doings. And while all of that in some ways is nurturing for me, there's also like one of the things I am the most nurtured by just being alone and being really quiet and not really doing much of anything.
Yeah. And all of those things that you were listing, those can all be self-love activities. Self-love looks different for everybody. So if you're a person who feels the most self-love when you create ceremony for yourself and you delve into being in a group space where you can feed yourself and devote to yourself, that's great. And at times self-love takes other forms. It takes the being quiet. So there's a lot of, there's a whole lot of things where I see this, I'm sure you see this too, and maybe some of our viewers can relate, where self-love means, oh yeah, go take a bath and splurge on a massage and eat the most decadent thing that you can find. And maybe that's the way of self-love. But let's talk about devotion for a minute. We've used that word a few times, but what does it actually mean? And Kat, how do you relate to devotion?
Well, I think that devotion is the for me, it's sort of like the higher plane of discipline, where we can start to. For me, discipline feels like, oh, it's work, and I have to like make myself do it. But when I look at it from the lens of devotion, it's like, oh, I'm being fed from the light within the experience. I'm actually utilizing this like, what do I want to create is what I'm devoted to. Like, what do I want to see in the world is what I'm devoted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that my mission in the world is, it's very linked into me. Like, it's linked into my body and my energy and my emotions and how I'm doing. So if my mission is the thing that I am really focused on, then I have to look at where are the devotionary pieces, the things that I'm most devoted to doing. And one of those pieces is like loving myself and taking care of myself in a really deep way, because they're linked together. So it's like, for me, it's looking at what is linked to my greater mission on the planet, and then being really devoted to those things, even if I don't want to.
Yeah, that's a super important point, Kat, is that we need, in addition to the reprogramming, the societal reprogramming that takes place on even looking internally, self-love, the practice of self-love is that which enables us to do more externally. It's a little bit of a contradiction, but we're reclaiming selfness. I don't like to use the word selfish, but we're reclaiming selfness and self-love, of devote yourself to filling your own cup so much that it overflows and spreads to the world around you. So you're speaking about the work that you do, and for me this is true too, the work that I do is completely dependent on who I am and my energetic state. So it is absolutely fundamental to both of our missions. And for many of our viewers, this might be the case for you too. I know we have a lot of practitioners and healers who watch this podcast. It is essential to come from a place of overflowing self-love in order to be better able to show up in the world for our purpose. So that's another aspect of self-love, is it is an important part of the work too, and not just for healers, but for everybody.
Well, and leading off of that, I think that for those that are healers, and also for those that aren't healers, when we're looking at our mission and we're looking at what we're doing, when we're not coming from that place of overflowing self-love, of course, we don't have as much energy to give. We're not as connected to source as we can be. But we're also run the risk of needing our clients to validate us or to love us. And that is not a healthy dynamic to be in with your people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is a really important piece for us to all be in acknowledgement of. When we're not filling our cup, sometimes we're looking for it from somewhere, and maybe even subconsciously, energetically, we're looking for it with the people that we interact with. And for those of us who are practitioners, these are the people we're interacting with the most.
Yeah. And self-love, to me, another aspect I'm kind of considering, how do I relate to self-love? There's a worthiness component. Mm-hmm. And there's, again, going, especially for those of us who are in this field, there is the realm of being willing to journey into the shadow. That's And some of us are willing to look at certain shadow aspects and some of us are not, or we're not ready. I know I've had moments where, okay, I'm not ready to look at that shadow aspect of myself, but I know that at some point I'm going to need to go there because that's a part of who I am and I deserve it. I deserve to journey into my own shadow to uncover that and to shine the light on it. And so speaking about our relationships with our clients, some of that where, we have the understanding or, I've had the understanding now of, okay, part of my self-love practice means that I'm willing to do that. And then you have a client show up who might not be ready or isn't willing to delve into their shadow. And it's in some ways, I don't really take it personally anymore. I think I did for a little while, but about, okay, am I not helping you love yourself enough that you feel safe delving into your shadow? And it's not, you know what I mean? It's like the external validation of, okay, am I creating a space where it's safe for this person to actualize their self-love? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's an important piece for us to look at as practitioners. I know that as, when those that are called as healers, and, this could be anybody who's working, as, a social worker or a nurse or anything sort of a doctor has that sort of like healer vibe, that one of our pitfalls is that we will overgive and want to be constantly like pushing energy outward, and, have guilt and shame around to really taking care of ourselves. And a piece of self-love that I think is really important is forgiveness, because when we all make mistakes and we all have things that we don't show up for ourselves. We get in a relationship that takes us out. We don't eat well, or we run our body down, or we get into a situation, a work situation or whatever it is, where we're not in alignment with who we are. And sometimes we're just so hard on ourselves. When that happens, we end up taking ourselves out even more, instead of really allowing ourselves just to sit inside of forgiveness for ourselves. And I think that when we practice forgiveness, we practice forgiveness of self and we practice forgiveness of others. This can open our hearts more to loving ourselves. When we're holding resentments against other people, we have a harder time loving ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. This conversation feels timely. I was just working with a client last week about reframing the relationship with forgiveness. And one of the things that we have to consider is, and maybe this is a topic for another episode because it is so extensive, but it's not necessarily about you, it's not about you condoning whatever needs to be forgiven. It's not about you coming into like saying that anything's okay with that person, but forgiveness is an act of self-love, not anything to do with the other person, but because you deserve it. Forgiveness is an aspect of clearing energy. And by forgiving someone, you are saying to yourself, yes, I love myself enough to release this from my energy field. So that's, I think, again, we could probably treat that as its whole own episode, but for now, yes, forgiveness is part of the path.
Huh? Write that down, because that's very, very true.
Write what down?
About forgiveness. We'll get to that.
Okay, great. What about, when we were speaking a little bit, we were talking about the vision that we hold for ourselves, where yes, there is self-love practice in honoring who we are in the moment and saying, yes, I love myself. I'm present with myself as I am right now. And also understanding that that doesn't preclude who we're growing into. So one of the aspects that I really love considering about self-love is, how can we simultaneously be present with who we are now? As in, I love myself unconditionally as myself right now. And also, I love myself as I grow into this process of becoming this highest vision that I hold for myself.
Yes, I think that's really important as we vision ourselves forward into our future self. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's jump into a little bit. We've sort of started delving into this of why do we care about self-love? We care about self-love because, again, when we come from a full container, we are more able to do all the things. We're more able to show up for our work. We're more able to show up for our relationships. What else is a community benefit of self-love?
Well, I think that it's, we teach by example in a lot of ways. And we how we show up in the world is how we give permission for other people to show up in the world. And um, how children see themselves, like, oh, it's okay for me to stop, it's okay for me to just go read a book, it's okay for me to go and do something that I really love to do, and it's okay for me to love myself. I don't have to beat myself up over every mistake that I make. I can just love myself even in the midst of making a mistake. And you hang out with children, teaching. And you know we see the structure that society has given children, and how hard they are in themselves. Like when they make a simple mistake, it's like, oh my god, I'm horrible, I'm stupid, I'm bad. Like it's
the end of the world, because right, because they're conditioned to, my value is dependent upon someone else's validation of my worth. And I teach, I occasionally substitute teach at a high school. I also tutor some high school and middle school students. And I was actually having a little bit of this conversation yesterday with one of my students, where he's super motivated. He's seeing me for tutoring because this is the one class that he doesn't have an A in. And I just hear so much in his voice and in his practice. It really bothers him that he doesn't have an A. He wants to do a good job. He wants to show his teacher that he's working really hard. They have a 3-day weekend this coming weekend. So I asked him, what are your plans? He says, oh, homework. I said, okay, are you going to do anything else? He's like, if I have time. And I said, you're not, maybe. I said, I'm a tutor, not just of this, of academia, but of life skills. So maybe for 10 minutes every day, can you take 10 minutes to do something that really feeds you, that really nurtures you? And this kid is an amazing musician. So I was like, do you think for 10 minutes every day, you can just go hang out with your instruments and be in your own joy of your music? And he said, okay, yeah, I think I can do that. So again, it's where they're in, especially in academia land or in family land or whatever social pressures of, or their peers, and looking to the validation from the peer groups of, am I cool enough? Am I doing the right thing to put on this facade, and not really asking themselves, no, who am I and how do I feed myself? How do I love myself? Yeah, absolutely. By us loving ourselves more and giving permission and inspiration to the kids in our lives or the other people in our lives to do the same.
Yeah, giving ourselves that we are someone. Actually, I've been called this quite a few times by different people, that I am a permissionary. So I'll take that one on. I am a permissionary. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens, that's been reflected to me many times, is that by my being who I am and accepting who I am, loving who I am, that I am as odd as I am. I speak in tongues and I do weird things to people, and I am who I am. Mm-hmm. And that I can stand in that, and just be that I can be who I am. And that by doing that, by loving myself, which it took quite, it was very challenging for me to love myself enough to share my gifts with the world, to share the most vulnerable aspects of myself with the world, in the way that I work, to actually put that out there, to put it on video and put it on the internet as a permissionary, so that the people who are different, that have different kinds of gifts, that their magic is moving through them, and in whatever way that it is, to give them permission to love themselves and to show themselves and to share themselves. Because when we do that, we empower people to be able to actually make a difference in the world. And I think this is an important piece about self-love that we often don't, we don't realize that by loving ourselves, we actually give permission for others to love themselves.
Mm-hmm. This is something I like to think about in terms of consumptive versus creative living. And I'll explain that a little bit, where there are many people in the world who live consumptive lives, meaning maybe they don't actively contribute to their own health and well-being, or they work a job that they hate, and they wake up and they eat crap food because they don't know how to take care of their bodies. And they go to this job that they hate, and then they come home and they watch television that, or violent television, and then feed themselves something that doesn't feed them, and go to sleep and do it all over again. So I call that, someone who is not present in their own self-love lives a consumptive life, where they're looking for things outside of themselves to feed themselves, where, okay, I'm dependent on my relationship for my emotional health and well-being, or my own self-worth is tied up in my job, and then you lose your job and then you're worth nothing if you don't love yourself. So that is, again, consumptive, feed me, feed me, feed me from the external world, as opposed to creative living, where you are in charge of and you take accountability for your own creative process. And I say creative in terms of you feed yourself so much that you cannot help but spread it out into the world. The person who devotes themselves so completely to their own happiness, even if they do absolutely nothing else externally or functionally for anybody else, they cannot help but spread that self-love to other people. Because by doing so, they are so full of their own joy and self-love that it spills over and affects everyone around them. So again, back to reclaiming selfishness as a necessary component of self-love, saying, I am worthy, I deserve this. And by doing so, again, we fill ourselves so much that we can pour it out.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it speaks to our own, where we, our own mistaken ideas around self-love. And, what we think that it is often something that's actually harming us. And is more destructive behavior, whether it's like, oh, I'm going to go, I love myself. I'm going to prove I love myself. Let's see, what can I do? I'm going to go buy myself a bunch of new clothes. I'm throwing on a credit card that I can't, because I can't actually afford them. And then that's going to stress me out. And I'm actually like taking myself down. I'm going to go to this restaurant and I'm going to eat this food that's actually really bad for my body. And I'm going to actually feel worse tomorrow. And so we can like look at those like self-sabotaging behaviors of, where do we have an unhealthy relationship to the concept of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important that we start to really kind of unwind, how was I taught to self-love?
Or even what love itself means. Love and devotion as something that actively contributes to your health, happiness, and well-being. Where, I love the example that you gave of retail therapy, right? Or of going out and ordering, say, okay, I'm going to order the most decadent piece of chocolate cake because I've been really good and I deserve it. And I feel kind of bad, or whatever the deal is. And I need comfort. And this is my means of loving myself, by pouring a bunch of sugar and processed flour and chemicals into your body. And so even that, there's this, the self-destructive that comes in the guise of self-love. So what are some tools that we can use to distinguish that?
I think that it comes down to, for me, one of the things that I can look at, as a child, retail therapy was very big in my house. So it was definitely if it was like, okay, let's go shopping. And so that has long been something that I have you know, is just like, oh, that's the most comfortable little groove for me to get into. And, you know, I've totally gotten myself in trouble so many times with debt and things, and been like, okay, why did I do that? So I think it's important to really look at our family of origin and what was, you know, how was love expressed in our family? And did it come in the form of food or shopping or, you know, consuming technology or, you know, whatever it is that maybe could be reframed into a higher level of self-love experience, so that we actually, the aftermath feels better. So there is a gauging to occur that's the, okay, how does this make me feel in the moment? And how does this make me feel afterwards? Like, does it bring actually guilt? Does it actually make my life more difficult because it's, you know, it's making me tired, it's making me poor, it's making me, you know, stressed out about something because I'm making that as my choice for self-love. And then starting to explore what are maybe some of the self-love options that I wasn't exposed to or have less experience with, and that I could maybe try out. And it's just like you said with this boy, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's singing, you know, like that's a big one for me. Like if I just go outside and I sing, I'm doing great, and I don't need to go and buy a new pair of shoes. So
much cheaper.
It's so much cheaper.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it's finding those things that really make us feel good. You know, and it can be anything, and it's okay if it's simple or silly or doesn't hold value. Like a lot of times we're like, oh, if I should only spend my time doing things that create value, it's like, oh, you know what, if you like coloring in a coloring book, like, do it. It's like,
yeah, that's another important aspect of self-love, is knowing and honoring what legitimately, genuinely contributes to your health, happiness, and well-being, and doing it even if other people do not understand, or even if other people look at what you're doing and call it a waste of time, or have other opinions, their own projections that they're putting on it. Or if they look at you, you know, Kat and I have talked extensively on past episodes about part of our self-love practice means not going out to parties when we're tired or don't want to be around people, and doing that even in spite of social conditioning and the desire to put energy outwards. So I'm trying to think of what odd self-love practices I have. I can't really think of any weird ones right now, but right now, one of my self-love practices is my training for a half marathon. And I guess that could seem odd, of doing something that a lot of people might not do or might view as really hard, like going for a 6-mile run in the snow when I couldn't leave my house because I was snowed in on the hill, but I still went running. Or, you know, doing my speed workout in the pouring rain and getting absolutely soaked, but still it's devotion to my health, happiness, and well-being. So, and I'll, you know, kind of the net energy in that, even though, yeah, I got kind of cold and I had the needle points of rain driving in my face, overall, it felt really good and my body feels better for it. I feel mentally more engaged for doing that, and I feel like I trust myself more and I have more confidence. So that's a practice of self-love.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that I love to do is like build, you know, put my little altars and my, you know, little things with my little animal parts and, you know, candles. And, you know, I blow through a lot of candles in this house. And I can feel where there have been times where I will have this like wave of self-judgment, like, oh, you know, I'm being wasteful. But then the reality is, like, that fills me with so much joy and happiness to like light a bunch of candles and have, you know, incense and sit with the beautiful things that I hold dear, which, you know, are kind of oddball things, right? They're like animal parts and crystals and you know, little potions and things like that. It's like that stuff fills me with wonder and awe and makes me so happy. And so that's not going to be everybody's thing, but
No.
how do you find your pieces that make you feel really good, right? Gardening makes me feel amazing. I love to just like, I don't even need to even do anything, just like digging in the dirt makes me happy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this is a good time to talk about our self-assessment
Mm-hmm.
of really asking ourselves the questions, what in my life do I currently do, or what do I currently have in my life that is actively contributing to my health, happiness, and well-being?
Mm-hmm.
This is how we start to, and our last week's episode was about discernment. So this is employing our skills of discernment here, tuning in with your body, tuning in with your heart, your mind, and your spirit to feel what specifically feeds me about this. We
Yeah.
can ask ourselves these questions about our jobs. My job, when I consider my work in light of my self-love, is my work a practice in self-love? Do I feel as though my job contributes to my health, happiness, and well-being? Maybe yes, maybe no, or maybe certain parts yes, but other parts no. So we use these questions as a tool to help us identify, how am I devoting myself to loving myself in all of these means of my life? We can do this with our relationships, romantic and otherwise, our friends. Does having this relationship in my life make my existence on this earth more wonderful?
Mm-hmm. Our home, the home, for me, the home is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Very Cancerian. So when I don't have a home with my stuff and just like feels like my space, that makes me really uncomfortable. I've discovered this about myself. Like I love to travel, but really, honestly, it's really not it's not that easy on me. I find that I way overpack because I'm trying to like bring my life with me, and um, you know, knowing that I have a home to come back to is really important to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, where does your sense of safety lie? Maybe your sense of safety lies in freedom, and the minimalist lifestyle is for you, and that's how you feel the most loving to yourself. And Kat, I'm the same way. As I need my home base with all my crystals and my gems and my potions, and then I can go out into the world and feel safe and feel loving and expansive, and then come back and recharge.
Yeah.
So what about, our relationships with our bodies? That's another really big one. A lot of us have to work through some kind of body relationships where I don't feel comfortable in my body. Oh, I hate this part of my body. I hate that my body does this thing, or I hate how it looks or feels or whatever. And so asking ourselves those questions about, again, wanting to devote ourselves to health. And so we can simultaneously hold the vision of highest health and well-being in my physical form or in my body, and also devote to self-love as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that one really is one of the more difficult ones for most people because of the standards of beauty that are held in our society. It's there's always something that's coming up, and so that's a huge devotionary practice for most
Mm-hmm.
people, to just be in loving acceptance of the body, and in, okay, what am I going to do today that's going to make my body feel better, whether that's taking a run or taking a walk, or making sure that I get the supplements I need and the food that's going to make me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And our relationship with our body. And I'd also say our relationship with our emotions. um, you know we have a lot of clients, and we are working with empaths who there's a lot of emotion, a lot of emotional depth that we have access to, that we experience. And we've been taught in our society that emotions aren't really something that should be expressed, that they're not healthy, that they're not important, that um, that we should stay, like stay away from them, if we're feeling low, if we're feeling like a low energy or in a low emotional state, we can actually make ourselves feel worse by just beating ourselves up over it instead of just sitting in it and being like, okay, this is what's happening right now. I am an amazing person having this emotional experience right now.
Yeah.
I love myself and I'm having the shittiest time right now. This is so painful. I can't even believe how painful this is. And wow, I really love myself for actually being in this moment.
Yeah, I love how you phrased that. That's quite honestly one of my favorite tools and one of my favorite things for retraining ourselves. And I recommend this to my students and clients, and is, okay, identify, I feel really sad right now, or I feel whatever, and I love myself. I am having a really hard day. I feel really upset about all of these things, and I love myself. It's not a mutually exclusive thing. It's going back to what we were talking about, like especially with the kiddos, where it is possible for us to make mistakes or us to not be bright, shiny, happy, whatever, and we can still love ourselves in those moments. We are still just as worthy. We are still just as deserving of devotion and deep self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The inner child, I think, is a big one. We were talking about external children, or, kids in society. What about our own inner children?
Yeah, I
Think
think
about yourself as a child. Think about who your inner child is. What do they need in order to learn self-love? Do they love themselves?
mm-hmm.
Or are they looking to you or looking externally for validation and support and teaching them that they are worthy of love?
Yeah, I think this is really important. And I know I'm sure most of my clients, there is often a time when we need to really tune into that inner child and find out what it is that the inner child is saying and
Mm-hmm.
feeling, and how do we support the child within us to feel loved by us as this, adult that we are, and in so doing creating this feedback loop of love that's starting to grow and radiate, and so that we can start to see when we're looking at the world through the eyes of a child who is unloved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I'm not loving myself enough, and then punish ourselves for that. So as we're talking about self-love and asking yourself these questions, doing some self-assessment, it's really important. Part of your self-love practice is going to be to say, okay, maybe here are all the ways in which I'm not loving myself in the way that I want to, and I love myself, rather than, oh, I'm such a bad person because I'm not loving myself in all of these ways. You see the subtle distinction there?
Yeah, that's such the trap that we fall into. I don't love myself enough. I'm such an ass.
Right, exactly. So I am growing in my self-love practice, and I love myself. I am wanting to show up in all of these ways, and I love myself. It's a God, I love that so much. I was actually doing that on my run today. As I was running, I didn't have my music. I was following the sunlight, basically. It was such a beautiful morning. So yeah, I want to share this with you. I took kind of an easy run because yesterday I did 8 miles, so that was my long run. And so today I did 4, just pretty easy. And I was just following the light. The sun was coming up, and I was just looking around me and saying, okay, there's beautiful light over there. So I would run over there. Oh, there's beautiful light over there. Okay. Rather than having my route in mind of, okay, I need to do this many miles and include this many hills. It was purely out of joy of what will feed me right now in this moment is following the light. So I was just running around chasing beautiful sunlight as the sun was coming up. And as I was doing so, I love myself. My hip is kind of sore right now, and I love myself.
Yeah. And, for me this morning, I was in bed and I was repeating these, just kind of mantras as they were coming up, as that I am of the light and love, and I am moving forward on my path, and I am devoted to a life of service, and I am connected to my guides and angels, and I am able to give and receive with grace and ease. And so I was just saying these things just as they would come up for a really long time, of just all the things that I am. And as I was just coding inside myself this I am loving myself, and I am loving the world, and I am loving the people in my life. It just gave me like such an open-hearted feeling this morning as I came out of that experience.
Oh, that's lovely. And
Yeah.
that's something I would like to suggest to our viewers as an action step moving forward is make a list, or other, as we're doing the self-assessment, yes, you're asking yourself, in what ways can I love myself more? But also, how are you already rock starring the whole self-love thing?
Yeah.
Make a list of that too, and say, when I do these things and when I am present in these ways, I am totally acing the self-love.
Right. And acknowledge ourselves. And I think the other list to make is to really start to be in gratitude for ourselves. And a lot of times when we have a gratitude practice, we focus a lot on our external gratitude. So I'm really grateful that I have a home. I'm really grateful that I have food. I'm really grateful that I have these friends. I'm really grateful for my family. But it's almost like, okay, make a side list and start to really explore what you're grateful for about yourself. Like, I'm really grateful that my body is very strong. I'm really grateful that, I can run 8 miles. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. Yeah. And just having that gratitude for, I'm really grateful that my body can do this breath work. I'm really grateful that my body can sing. I'm really grateful for my, for my sight, for all the things that we're grateful for about our own self. I'm really grateful for the fact that I'm able to show up and help other people. Like, I'm going to start loving myself more all of a sudden.
Yeah. And, you listed a lot of physical things and also the emotional ones as well. I am so grateful that I hold my heart in compassion, even when it's hard. I am so grateful that I can have healthy boundaries, right? I am so grateful that I love myself enough to say no to someone I love. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's really important.
Yeah. We didn't talk about boundaries at all. So boundaries are really important for self-love. Yeah.
Yeah. We probably just need a whole
episode on that. Right.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I find that gets in our way of self-love is holding on to shame and guilt. And that sometimes we are completely unable to love ourselves, and then we're in this pattern of being like, I can't even love myself. Like, what is wrong with me that I can't even love myself? And that one of the pieces is that we're holding on to shame inside of our bodies. And so shame and guilt is one of are just insidious, and they're very much living in the body. And so a really important tool to use is to really allow yourself to go inside the body and breathe, take some deep breaths, and start just letting the body move intrinsically, let it have some sort of movement, and start to feel, and start to use the hands to tap and touch, and put the hands on the heart, on the belly, on your sex, like really going into the body and starting to feel like, oh, where do I hold my shame? Where do I hold the guilt that I have for, maybe something in particular, and maybe just because it's there. Mm-hmm. And then using the breath and using tapping, using sound, using movement to shake and move and dance and flow the energy of shame and guilt out of the body, letting it go because it's really not serving your life, just really letting it go and forgiving, bringing in the forgiveness, forgiving yourself for whatever it is that happened. And then, drawing in the light and drawing in love and just feeling, allowing yourself to feel the love of all that there is a beautiful universal light and love, which we all have access to, and allowing yourself just to sit within that, and then starting to feedback loop it with your own hands. So it's your hands giving you that love. And then you're like, oh, wait, like I am loving myself here in this moment. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can self-love. I think that's one of the most important tools that we can use, especially if we're feeling like blocks around, why aren't I loving myself? Why aren't I doing the things that I know that I love to do? Why aren't I doing my practice that I know would really feed me? Why aren't I eating well? Like, I can't figure out why I won't do it. That as a practice of going in and utilizing movement, breath, and sound to clear and cleanse and purify shame and guilt out of the body is really important.
Absolutely. Do we have a couple of minutes that we could do some of that?
I don't know. It's like 1:00.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well, Kat, I know you are so on point with that practice. Do you have any, you already gave us some tips, but what do you have that you can go further with people on that?
Well, if you're interested in this kind of work, I am available, so you can always reach out to me. And I have a new mentorship program that's coming up. It starts next week. It's a group mentorship program that I'm really excited about. And that is it also includes private sessions. So that is a program where this is one of the aspects that we could definitely end up getting into. And I find that it really does support people to learn how to use movement, breath, and sound to support their journey, to cleanse and purify, to draw what needs to be drawn in, and to reach this place of really self-acceptance and love.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know your work, especially with those practices, is super awesome. I have been the beneficiary of those practices. So thank you so much for joining us. I think I'd like to leave all our viewers with an invitation today. So we gave you a lot of different tools and ideas to work with. The self-assessment, asking yourself, in what areas can I love myself more? And in what areas am I already doing a really great job loving myself? Looking into, making lists of those things, making lists of our gratitudes for ourself, for our devotion. Also acknowledging the process and saying, just in the process of self-love, I am bringing love and acceptance to my process. I love myself through my process. Releasing the shame and the guilt from our body, from our physical systems, the cell memory. And one thing that I think I'd like to leave you with is an invitation to do something today that truly feeds you. If you don't have it planned already, go ahead and mark it off in your calendar because you deserve it. But some practice of devotion, and explore, what does devotion mean to you, and how can you take some time today to devote yourself to your self-love with something that truly, genuinely feeds your health, happiness, and well-being.
Yeah, and we would love to hear from you if you have something that you end up doing or creating or exploring or finding out. We would love to hear about how that goes for you, or if you feel inspired to post it on Facebook, tag us so that we can celebrate with you. And as always, you can reach out to us at shamansistersessions@gmail.com or through our Facebook page, Shaman Sister Sessions. And we are really excited to continue this journey of these talks and sharing with you. And
yeah, and next week you can look forward to shamanic relationship. We're delving into the so today we're talking about self-love, and next week we're delving into how does that manifest externally in romantic relationships and all our relationships. This is not exclusively talking about partnership.
Yeah.
How do we show up for relationship in a shamanic way?
That's great, because Michelle, you and I definitely have a very intense shamanic relationship, I think.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, absolutely. Kat and I are in a wonderful, very shamanic relationship, and it's so supportive. Oh, one thing that we forgot to say that we can say now, a self-love accountability buddy.
Oh,
is
yes.
a great way to support your self-love practice. So Kat and I were noticing this yesterday as we were validating each other. Like, hey, I'm so proud of you that you did a really great job with, Kat did something really wonderful. She's beginning a wonderful project working with homeless at-risk youth in spiritual counseling practice. And she was congratulating me on my 8-mile run, because that's the longest I've ever run. And she was saying, I'm so proud of you. And I'm saying, I'm so proud of you too. And so it was a way for us to highlight something that we're doing that we're really happy and proud and excited about, so that we can love ourselves more.
Yeah. So if you have a friend that you can hook up with, where, maybe once a week you're like, hey, here's my wins, right? A lot of times we call our friends and we just kind of bitch about what's not going right. But if we can remind ourselves of the wins that we have every week and kind of brag a little bit, and then get that reinforcement from somebody who's really loving and able to hold that space for us. Some people are not good at that, but find the person who's good at that and who's able to be like, wow, I'm really proud of you. That's amazing. I can't believe that you did that. That's just like, I'm really impressed, and congratulations. And
Yeah.
be able to sit in it and notice when it feels uncomfortable, and sit in it and like take it in and go, oh yeah, okay, I can take it in. That's a really helpful practice for cultivating this self-love.
Absolutely. Because you're creating self-love opportunities by even having a brag in the first place of, this is one of the noticings. I love myself so much, and I did this thing and I love that. And then having it be, the immediate feedback from someone who loves you and wants to support you. Oh my gosh, you're so amazing. You did that. And so it's a way of retraining ourselves in the self-love process. So Kat, thank you so much for being my self-love accountability buddy.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, many blessings to all of you wonderful viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Valentine's Day and happy self-love.